We've all watched the classic movie Ben-Hur, a story of revenge and redemption during the time of Christ in the decade before his crucifixion. His face is not shown in the classic movie, but he encounters the protagonist, Judah Ben-Hur, at key moments. The classic movie was remade in 2016 and was dismally reviewed by critics. By Hollywood standards, the remake was a box office flop, but it performed well with Christian audiences. The remake is a reimagining of the story that amps up the message of forgiveness and redemption, even to include the chief antagonist, Messala. Arguably, Messala is more evil in the remake, so the ending is a surprise. It turns the classic movie on its head. Messala's death in the classic movie happens just as we might expect. He curses Judah with his dying breath by revealing that Judah's mother and sister are alive, but after spending years in the dungeons of the Roman Empire, they've become lepers. Ben-Hur won 11 Oscars in 1960, including Best Picture. It's universally acclaimed by critics and audiences. Was it necessary to remake this movie? The OG movie is still available to watch, but sometimes audiences respond well to a reimagining of a classic story, especially if it discusses a contemporary issue. Here, it's class warfare. The Ben-Hur remake gives Messala a complete backstory as a penniless orphan who was taken in by the wealthy Hur family and raised as Judah's adopted brother. In the remake, Messala's father was one of the conspirators who assassinated Julius Caesar and was executed for it. So Messala is anxious about his status in the empire, and as a result, goes the extra mile to prove himself by betraying the family of Hur. I'll put aside for a moment the issue of whether Messala's redemption is believable or not. Whether it's believable is beside the point according to the movie, because the movie wants to address the issue of class division by implying that Messala's status as a scrappy orphan is a mitigating circumstance and even justifies his behavior to an extent. Wealth is also shown as a strike against Judah. For example, after Judah spends 5 years as a galley slave because of Messala's betrayal, he's shipwrecked and taken in by a wealthy merchant, Sheikh Ilderim, who says, "So, you spent the first 20 years of your life in luxury and the last 5 years as a slave, and now you think you know something about suffering?" Well, I would think so. I believe anyone would think so, but not the screenwriters on this remake. The Roman Empire here comes off as no worse than in the original, but we're shown many more scenes of anger directed at the empire. In the original, Judah went to the galley for sedition because he was on the rooftop of his house watching the governor pass by when a tile came loose and struck the governor. In the remake, a zealot shoots an arrow at the governor from the rooftop and Judah takes the blame, although he barely knows the zealot. But this again is the theme of class warfare, now directed at the Roman Empire. The classic movie portrayed at least a couple of sympathetic Romans. The consul, Quintus Arrius, adopted Judah as his son. The emperor Tiberius suspended the sentence Judah was serving for sedition, and all the wealthy folks in Rome celebrated Judah's success as a chariot driver. In contrast, the remake has no sympathetic Romans, except for one, Drusus, a former soldier of the Roman army who falls on hard times and leads Judah to the dungeons where his mother and sister are imprisoned. And the implication is Drusus is only sympathetic because he no longer serves Rome. The character of Quintus Arrius in the classic movie represented a kinder view of Rome, but he's cut from the remake. His storyline is absorbed by the character of Sheikh Ilderim, who becomes a benefactor to Judah. And the Sheikh's wealth is excused because he makes money at the expense of the empire. "Their excessive nature lines my purses," he says. I rewatched the classic movie right after watching the remake. The film stock of the OG looks quaint. The sets look like sets, and there aren't that many fast edits. The chariot race, though, holds up very well next to the remake. Audiences love those scenes of Charlton Heston and Stephen Boyd getting into a fist fight while driving their chariots. The remake amps up those scenes, with the actors throwing a lot more punches. The Rotten Tomatoes score on the remake is abysmal. According to critics, the remake was the worst movie of all time. The audience score is much better. Now, when remaking a classic movie that won 11 Oscars, critics are likely to pounce if the remake doesn't win 11 Oscars. Because here we are, more than 50 years after the original, and that's the best you could do? So I believe I get it. And it's appropriate that Rotten Tomatoes divides up the ratings into two scores, the critic score and the audience score. Because even if the remake could have been a lot better given the advances in film technology, the movie still might be entertaining to contemporary audiences, especially if they hate classic movies. What I'll say about these two movies, the original and the remake, is that I never would have watched the remake if I hadn't watched the OG. My enjoyment of the OG drove my interest in watching the remake. So, to my mind, the remake supplements the original. It cannot replace the original, and I believe that both should be watched. With that being said, let's take a classic movie from the same era, Giant, released 3 years before Ben-HUR. Martin Scorsese has called Giant one of his guilty pleasures, and he's watched it about 40 times. Now, this movie is similar in its themes to the Ben-HUR Remake. We have a scrappy antagonist who grew up in poverty. His name is Jet Rink, played by James Dean in an iconic performance. We're shown that he discriminates against indigenous folks in oil-rich Texas, and he hates their benefactor, the Benedict family, very similar to Masala's hatred in the Ben-HUR remake. Now, this film, Giant, to my mind, deals with class division in a way that was far ahead of its time. There is no redemption for James Dean's character at the end of the movie, unlike Masala in the Ben-HUR remake. As I mentioned, Masala's redemption in the remake seems rather abrupt. It seems forced. So for the folks watching this video who hate classic movies, you might want to watch Giant before swearing off classic movies. The journey of James Dean's character is absorbing. His lack of redemption is not what we would choose for his character, but as a snapshot of a moment in time in the life of that character, it's dramatically very powerful. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.